All right. Can everyone see my screen, Kashima, just to
Yes.
confirm? Okay, excellent. Okay, so as you'll see, this is part two. For those who are joining again, thank you. Definitely appreciate your support and attendance. For those who missed part one, we basically overturned 6 myths about older experienced workers. And these are the myths: that accomplished workers don't resist change, they help teams navigate it with confidence. Experience doesn't expire, it compounds. Seasoned professionals are not winding down, but reinvesting their experience in meaningful work. Experienced workers often represent greater value per dollar spent. Veteran professionals channel energy into impact with strategic wisdom, and older professionals and younger leaders bring out the best in each other through respect and shared purpose. If you're interested, I did put together like a fact sheet that helped us inform how to overturn these 6 myths. So later on in the presentation, there will be an opportunity for you to scan a QR code and request that fact sheet if you're interested. Okay, so today we are going to do a brief introduction of 50 Whys, going to do a brief overview of the current job market. I'm going to share a few case studies from our business and the candidates that we've worked with, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A because we know that's where you'll get the most value. So, first, I'll introduce myself. I'm Maggie Riyad. I am a recent entrepreneur after having worked in Fortune 500 companies, different SaaS companies. So, I've had a variety of experiences, and I'm really enjoying the entrepreneurship journey. I will say that it's not for everyone, but it is fun, and I'm enjoying the journey with one of my young childhood friends. We started this business because both of us experienced a difficult time trying to find work after our latest layoffs. And we decided that rather than continue looking for jobs, we would start a platform that could help others that were going through the same thing as us. So we have been in business for almost 3 years now, and we've placed several individuals, and we have a variety of different clients on board that are willing and happy to see the different candidates that we bring to the table. So I'm glad to have you all with us, and let's get into it. So the first thing I wanted to share was a current overview of the 2026 US job market. So the truth of the matter is it's pretty volatile, but it's not collapsing. It is a bit challenging, but unemployment has actually been stable at 4.4%. We are seeing that hiring is at the lowest level since the early pandemic. But the interesting thing is that for the first time in about 5 or 6 months, job openings has actually been a positive versus a negative. So in February, we saw 92,000 jobs lost. In March, we saw 178,000 jobs added. So it's been very encouraging, but not necessarily reliable yet. We need a few more months of consistent data. I will say that there are still major employers that have announced job cuts or layoffs. So we've heard from UPS, Amazon, Dow, MasterCard. Those are just some examples of some of the companies that have already announced layoffs in 2026. Okay, so it is a selective market, but it's not like unheard of that people are getting hired. And so, what we want to do today is share some case studies with you of examples of candidates, what we did with them specifically to help them get hired. And hopefully, you can take some of these tips and tactics to use for yourself. Okay, just keep in mind that this is all from a recruiter perspective. But most of these tips and tactics should apply to individuals as well. All right, let's start with our first case study, using experience from over 15 years ago. So, like myself, I have a whole host of different experiences that I've accumulated over the years. Some things are relevant that I may have done a long time ago, but it's like riding a bike. I still know how to do them. It just shows up chronologically later or earlier, if you will, in my resume. So what we did, what you're seeing on the screen, and mainly for privacy, but this is a live example where we had an HR generalist role, and the candidate had done HR work much earlier in her career, as you can see, from 2003 to 2010, and the role was in 2026. And this is what her resume looked like when we found her. Okay, and so what we did was we worked with her to actually change some around. And what you'll notice is the experience, most of the bullet points are the same. They're just in a different order and highlighting her HR generalist experience. I'll just go back for a second. If a recruiter were to scan this, a typical recruiter, they might not actually look at the HR generalist role. They might stop at operations manager, program coordinator within the first few seconds and decide, oh, this person isn't as relevant as maybe another resume that looks like this. So we're trying to bring the most relevant part of the experience, the fact that this individual can in fact do the job. And then you could look at other, skills and expertise that they bring to the table. And this is of course not the entire resume, but I'm just highlighting the pieces that were relevant to this case study that we're discussing. So now, one of the most important things to consider is that you need to try to sync LinkedIn as much as possible with your resume. So the issue is that on LinkedIn, and part of the screen is not showing up, but you'll get the slides afterwards. So on LinkedIn, those that are familiar with LinkedIn know that anything you enter in the professional experience section has to have a date. That's just one of the requirements by LinkedIn. So what we suggest is that you use the heading and the about section to highlight some of these things. And you could literally put, like, your heading could say HR generalist, employee experience, DEI advocate, and your about section could list these core HR expertise elements. So make sure you're using those two sections on your LinkedIn profile to highlight the experience that you want for the jobs that you prefer. Oh, here they are. Sorry, I guess they were in in animation mode. Okay. So if we're going to flip the script, essentially what 50 Wise would say is take control of your career story and focus on relevance versus chronology. All right, next case study. If you have time period gaps in your work experience, which could be caused by a myriad of things, either a long job search, caring for an elderly adult, caring for kids, whatever, maybe your own health, whatever is going on, we have time period gaps in our work experience. So let's look at this case study. Again, as a different type of recruiter, we go beyond and look way beyond gaps and the way resumes are structured because we want to give individuals a chance and we're trying to approach job search differently. So we found an individual who the resume ended at 2024. Again, illustrative bullet points. I think if you'll notice, they're very similar to the previous one. But the point we're trying to make in this case study is that the experience ended in 2024, but here we are in 2026. So, what we did is we worked with this individual and coached her to create a separate part on the resume that says professional development and caregiving, period. In her case, she was doing family caregiving. And these are some of the examples of bullet points that you could include to highlight the fact that you are staying relevant, you're completing coursework, and go ahead and be forthright about the fact that you are supporting family caregiving. Most folks can either relate or at least understand that this is an important need in people's lives. So it is important to address the gap and call it out. I will be sharing later on the opportunity to receive an AI prompt sheet that we created, and it gives you the prompts that you can ask for how to create the right bullet points and tone for this gap that, depending on what you experienced personally. So 50 Wise would flip the script and say, explain the gap and show what grew there instead of hiding from it, being ashamed of it, or not talking about it at all. Okay, next I'd like to move to some practical tips from mock interviews that we've done with live candidates and have then been placed. Okay, so first of all, be preparing. For me, I did a mock interview, and the gentleman was extremely prepared, almost to the extent that I felt like I ended my question and I felt like I had almost turned on a recording because he literally spit back what was a memorized, very rehearsed response, like he had practiced every single question possible. And my feedback to him was, I think those are great. I would like to see a little bit more personality, a little bit more of who you are. And don't be afraid to show um, a little bit more of yourself when you're answering the questions. So I would say, yes, be prepared, know what all the questions are. But instead of rehearsing every single possible answer, maybe think about the top two or three stories or two or three experience items that you want to convey, and make sure that you're navigating the answers by applying your responses to the exact business, the exact company, the job description, and the current needs of the company. So don't be afraid to have some change, some adjustments. So be careful about showing up too scripted. Okay, next, I would say ask clarifying questions. Too many times we take the question, assume we know what the interviewer is asking, and we go down a path or a rabbit hole, and then 5 minutes later, not only did we not answer the question, we've probably exasperated or frustrated the interviewer. So you can ask clarifying questions at the beginning if it's obvious and you need or you have a couple of paths in your mind. You can ask clarifying questions after you've given a minute of a response to make sure this is going down the right path. Is this actually answering your question? Is this what you had in mind? And you can ask clarifying questions at the end to say, did this answer your question? But more importantly, was there an element or a point that I might have missed in what you were looking for that I actually have in my expertise, but didn't convey it to you? All these questions first show maturity, show interest, curiosity, and give you the opportunity to respond in the way that the interviewer wants. So those are a couple more tips. Dress for the part. I always encourage people to either ask, if you have the opportunity to ask an HR person or the recruiter, what how you should dress. Or if you're ever, in doubt, I would dress up versus dressing down. Don't overshare. We have many examples of individuals that will drone on and on about their education, their kids, their parents, whatever is going on in their life when none of it is relevant. So be mindful not to overshare. Try to be brief, but um, relevant and in depth when possible. Okay, pride in old accomplishments. We've had several instances where folks hang on to awards, I don't know, patents, all kinds of things that they have from the early 2000s, maybe even 1990s. And they're fine, and you can list them on your resume, you can mention them, but they should not be the center of how you're answering questions and what you're bringing to the table. The interviewers are looking for the most current, most relevant expertise possible. Okay, and last but not least, you want to follow the STAR response model. Again, this is in our AI prompt sheet, but just very briefly, the S stands for situation, the T stands for task, A for action, and R result. So you want to make sure you're setting up your responses so that you cover all four and it's a comprehensive um, response answer to the question. Okay, so flipping the script, we don't want to just share what we've done. We want to show how it solves the current problems now. All right, let's move on to practical tips from resume updates we've done with live candidates. Again, all of this is from our recent experience working with candidates and placing them with hiring companies. Okay, remove what dates you. Okay, so what does this mean? There's multiple things that can date us, including uh, references to old technology that might not necessarily be in use today. Um, we were used to, in the old days, to write on our resume things like references available upon request, no longer needed. We no longer have objective statements. We have more like summaries, overviews, things like that, dating us, not just me. And again, you will find some of these references on the AI prompt guide that we will share with you. Another thing that we've noticed is email addresses. So the most common and current emails are Gmail emails, but some folks are still using AOL, Hotmail, Yahoo. So I would definitely suggest changing or switching to Gmail. And then the last thing that we've asked folks to change is a physical address anywhere on your resume. That definitely is dating you. All right. You want to focus on showing outcomes. Similar to what we talked about in the interview, it's not just a list of accomplishments or awards or tasks or responsibilities. You want to actually show outcomes. So instead of saying I led, a 10-person team, you could say we consistently delivered on X number of goals, this 10-member team. So you want to show outcomes, not just responsibilities. This is definitely very important. You need to match to your LinkedIn profile. We have had hiring managers ask us why there's such a disparity between LinkedIn and the resume, and they do go and check. And so if there's something that you are purposely trying to, highlight on your resume, but it's not on LinkedIn, they will question it and ask us. So I definitely recommend matching your resume to your LinkedIn profile. Um, we here at 50Wise, we use PDF. If you are applying directly through an ATS or a website, they will typically tell you what format they're looking for. If you're ever in doubt, this .docx seems to work the most of the time. You just have to be careful. A straight Word document, sometimes the formatting doesn't stick. Also, like a Gmail document or Google Word document, the formatting doesn't stay static. So you just have to be careful with that when submitting your resume. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the modern applicant tracking system. So a lot of people ask us, what do? We don't use or go through the modern applicant tracking system at 50Wise because we're working directly with the hiring managers. But for those that are applying elsewhere, it needs to be a clean and simple format. So no tables, no double columns, all of those formatting things will most likely get kicked out. Um, Maximum of 2 pages, and do your best to mirror the keywords for that specific job listing. That is probably the number one factor that the applicant tracking systems look for. I cannot speak to whether they're coded for dates or any other kind of bias, but those are our top three recommendations for your resume to get through an ATS system. All right. Oh, and one other thing, there are some free ATS checkers. One is jobscan.com, I've heard of. I have not used it personally, but you can feel free to check something like that out or even search for others. Okay, so 50Wise would flip the script by saying the goal isn't to be impressive, it's to be obvious. This was a huge mindset shift for myself personally. I'm used to listing as much as possible for as long as possible and starting to realize that the real goal is to just be obvious. Your resume is really designed these days to just get attention in the first few seconds of scanning, which gets you to the interview. All right. Next, we want to share some practical tips about job search tactics. I believe this is the last section, and then we will open it up for Q&A because I know this is where the most of you get the value. All right. So, first, very interesting. Um, we strongly recommend that you apply to jobs that are relevant for you, even if the LinkedIn analytics say things like over 100 applicants or your percentage is only 30%. You know yourself best. And now that we've been on the posting side of LinkedIn, we can see that the majority of people that apply are not relevant. So when it says over 100 applicants, 70% of those are actually not relevant. And some are applying from India and China and God knows where. So don't let the analytics drive your behavior. If you feel like this is a relevant job for you, we encourage you to apply. Network, network, network. We can't emphasize enough how important it is to talk to people. You might not actually find a specific job, but you're staying current, you're meeting folks, you're practicing how to answer questions, how to ask questions, how to be present on these virtual sessions. And many people say that they found their last job through networking. So we definitely encourage it and believe that it works wonders for all kinds of aspects of your job search. And this is where the hidden market comes in. I don't know if you've heard of this term, the hidden market, but essentially what it's referring to is the fact that people are getting hired without going through a job posting. And that is because either they networked and the timing was right, or they, knew somebody that was going to be looking for a job soon, or for whatever reason, maybe they moved someone internally, or whatever the situation, there is a fair amount of hiring going on without actually having a job posting. Follow up, so important. um, my co-founder and I have realized that lots of people do not send the simple thank you message, even to us, after we've helped them and spent time with them. It's just common courtesy to follow up, and it gives you an opportunity to stay top of mind for that person. Everyone is busy. And when you send a follow up message, whether it's a simple thank you or a follow up after a week, or I have a quick question, or whatever it is, you're staying top of mind and current for that person. And that can also lead to opportunities that may not have been obvious or right in front of them or you. Stay active on LinkedIn. This is a very interesting one because LinkedIn algorithms have changed, and it's no longer enough to just comment or like, or even post like a reference to an article or something. LinkedIn is rewarding people that share insights, actual experience, industry trends, things that are original from your own personal experience. And so, if you are actively searching for a job, one of the ways people are being found is through their posts on LinkedIn. So, this is also something in the AI guide that we have, a prompt for how you can create the right kinds of posts on LinkedIn, given your resume, given certain articles, anything you want to feed into the AI app. Okay, and last but not least, there are fake jobs out there. Most of them are pretty harmless, but there are companies that will post a job, uh, either to stay current on LinkedIn or to, grow their pipeline of potential candidates, but they're not actually hiring at the time. So there's nothing wrong with applying to these jobs, but if you never hear back, or you feel like it's gone into some big black hole, it could be because it's a fake job. At the end of the day, if you are the right candidate and you have relevant expertise, the hiring manager or the recruiter will get back to you. Okay, so 50 Whys would flip the script by saying, create opportunities by showing up where you're valued. Okay, so that's the main content that I wanted to share today. So I will turn it back over to Kashima, and we can look at the questions that are coming in, and hopefully I can answer them for you.
Yes, thank you, Maggie. That was really helpful and insightful. So we do have a couple questions in the Q&A box. So I'll start with Michael Anderson. He said, you mentioned dressing up. If in doubt, I've always felt that showing up in a suit dates you as well. Should I go no further than a blazer?
Yeah, thank you for that. And yes, I agree. I think probably it depends on the industry, but in general, you're right. I think a nice button-down top. So I would say that financial services, some media positions. So it depends on the industry, but you're right. In general, refer to it is probably efficient.
Thank you, Maggie. We have a question that says, is pivoting common when you're 50 plus?
Is what? Sorry, I didn't hear you, Kashima.
I don't know if anyone else is experiencing um
Wi-Fi. I'm gonna go off.
okay. Okay, yeah, we got some
I
people saying
apologize for
that they
that, but
can't
I
hear
think it
you.
might help with my Wi-Fi. Okay. Is this better? I'm gonna go off my video. I think it might be the bandwidth or something in the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's way better. So the person asked,
Okay.
is pivoting common when you're 50 plus?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So the candidates that we work with, no, pivoting is not common. The majority of the candidates we've worked with are actually, you know, have deep experience, and that's a big signal as to why we found them, we contacted them, and worked with them for the positions that we had listed. But I would say there are a fair number of folks that are transitioning for a variety of reasons. Either there's more openings in a new industry, like healthcare seems to be on fire these days. So if you have a transferable skill that you can use in the healthcare industry, then by all means transition. I will say that our experience working with hiring managers is they put a lot of weight on the ability to do the current job at hand. And the best way they know how to evaluate that is your past experience. So if you are pivoting, if you are trying a different industry, I think it is going to be a little bit more challenging first to get the interview. And then once you're in the interview, showing and proving that you can do the job. But this is where informational interviews, networking, and speaking to others in the industry can help you use their lingo, get to know what the current trends are, what the current challenges are. So it's by no means uh, you know, impossible. I just think based on where we sit, it's a lot easier if you can prove that you've done the job in question before.
Thank you. So we have another question about someone who is studying abroad in Mexico and they are a US citizen and they hope to find a job moving when they move back to the country. So this person asked, how do I increase my chances of getting an interview if screeners see that my location and job experience is in Mexico?
Hmm. Okay, interesting question. Again, we have not had that specific experience with our candidates, but I would imagine that the best thing to do, you don't have to necessarily say that you're located in Mexico, but I guess you're on your resume, it will show that you are in Mexico. Um, I'm not sure because I don't have expertise in that specific area. The one thing I might say is you might have to come back and potentially volunteer so that you can show some US based expertise. Another option might be similar to how we did the gap, addressing the gap. Like you might start with the most relevant experience that you have for this job that isn't in Mexico. And then you can have a separate section that details international expertise or international focus or something like that. And you can go back to the slides where we talked about the gap. That's the only thing that comes to mind, but unfortunately, we have not worked with companies that are specifically looking for international expertise or candidates that were based in international locations.
Thank you. We had a question about when is the best time to send a follow-up email?
So I would say that a thank you should be within 24 hours. I think that's common. I would say a follow-up email could be once a week, especially if they're not, reaching back out to you. Um, I- it really does depend. I mean, once a week could start to feel annoying, so I would say once a week, but after the third week, if they're not responding to you, then you may have to just give it a break and maybe switch to once a month, for example, until you hear the actual, result of what's been going on. I think it also depends on the stage. Like if you made it to the final round and you're not hearing from them, once a week might be too long. Like you might want to touch base once every 3 days or something. So it definitely depends on the stage, um, and how you feel about how much of a good match you were with that company.
Thank you. We have a really good question that asks, how do you overcome being overqualified for the role, and how do you manage this potential risk?
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to give you my perspective. There are many perspectives out there. There are a lot of people that will tell you, hide your uh, highest level of career achievement, hide all of your accomplishments, and shrink away from all of that so that you would be considered. So my personal preference and actual experience was to put my best foot forward, and the company that valued me and my expertise and my achievements was the best company for me. And I did hear the words, "We're a little concerned that you're overqualified. Can you help us understand your perspective on that?" And I simply told them that for me, any new job constitutes new learning. I have to learn a new product. I usually have to learn a new culture. I meet new people. And all of that is engaging, motivating, encouraging for me. And you can't ever be overqualified for that. That's all new and interesting work, because at the end of the day, you want to be in a place that values you for who you are. And you need to think about that. There are companies that value experience and are looking for, um, high level senior individuals to bring their experience to bear. And those are the people that you want to work with, you want to stay with. My personal experience, the company that I ended up working with, I was highly valued and ended up on, councils and different committees and special projects. And it ended up being a very rewarding experience for me versus a scenario where I undersold myself, took certain things off of my resume and then would have been in some very junior role that was demotivating, and I would have ended up either leaving or not accomplishing why I'm looking for a job to begin with. At this stage in my career, I'm not necessarily looking for promotion, advancement, even recognition. I'm looking for engagement. I'm looking for new and challenging work. And I'm also, in some cases, looking for a mission or a purpose that I can fulfill and contribute to. So I hope that answers your question. Feel free to submit it in a different way, or with different terminology if I did not address it. But yeah, I understand that overqualification is definitely a thing, but I think you don't want to shy away from it or circumvent it or hide it. I think you need to own it and go after the types of companies and hiring managers that will appreciate it.
Thank you, Maggie, for that response. That was great. We have a question from Kim. She says, I work in higher education. What is the overall expectation for cover letters in the use of AI? I write all my letters myself.
Yeah. Okay. Again, there's multiple perspectives on this. I will say that at 50 Wise, we don't look at cover letters and we have never submitted cover letters. So I realize that our experience is it could be unique. So if you're an individual applying, there might be a need for a cover letter. But my personal perspective is that people don't usually read cover letters. They are looking for the resume, they scan it quickly, and what goes through these ATS systems is usually just the resume as well. So, unless they are specifically requesting a cover letter, and some may, like, for example, higher education or a job that does require writing, they might request either a writing sample or a cover letter. But if they are not specifically requesting a cover letter, I don't know that I would spend a lot of time on it. And actually, as I'm speaking, I don't think we included cover letters in our AI prompt guide because we just haven't used them in such a long time. But again, caveat: this is, you know Maggie Riad at 50 Wise giving you her perspective. There may be other perspectives out there. I definitely encourage you to do the research and understand what that job description, that company, prefers and asks for.
Thank you, Maggie. We have a question from Betty. She asks, do I need several LinkedIns if I'm applying to several types of jobs? I have worked in several verticals throughout my lifespan.
So this is a great question, and I had a similar situation. Can't say several, but I have two, let's call it expert career paths in my past. And it did come to a point where I had to pick one. And for me, I ended up choosing the customer success role at a SaaS company. That was one path. My other path was strategy and innovation. So what I did was I created my LinkedIn profile for the customer success role and all the highlights there and my resume. And then I had an alternate resume for innovation and strategy. And I did include all of my innovation and strategy experience on LinkedIn, but in my case, it happened to be later or earlier, sorry, in my career. So it was lower on the LinkedIn profile anyway. Um, so my suggestion would be pick your most desired role that you would actually want to be doing, in 2026 and beyond, and make that your priority, make that your focus, your emphasis on everything you're doing, but have a backup resume for maybe one or two alternates if the right position shows up and you want to actually apply to it. But no, you cannot have, I don't suggest having multiple LinkedIn's. I think it will cause, some schizophrenia probably for you and too much frantic craziness trying to remember which one are you logged in with and who's seeing what and what are you posting. I don't think it's worth that level of of detail and profile. But I do strongly recommend you pick one, you stay true to it, you pursue it, and um, and I wish you the best in that pursuit.
Um, let's see. Kim also asked, how can we connect with roles that are actually open? By the time I find roles online, they're already closed 24 hours after posting.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, a great question. I think I would strongly recommend staying in touch with recruiters in your industry or for your role, networking with, you know, previous colleagues, uh, a- anyone who you've seen speak at webinars like this, or, I mean, I will tell you that most people are open to helping folks, at least speak with people for 30 minutes. It's very difficult, or I should say, it's not very difficult to reach out to people and find someone who is willing to at least speak to you. They might not have the job, but eventually, as you get to know more and more people, you will find where the jobs are. And there are a host of job boards, a host of industry associations. There's lots of different resources, I think, out there that you can plug into to find jobs. And as I said in the very, very beginning, it is a selective market. So, don't give up. So many people are in their, completing a year, 18 months. Yesterday, I spoke to somebody who's been looking for a job for 2 years. So, don't get discouraged. There are jobs out there. You just have to plug into the right networks. I'm going to share a screen with you shortly with our LinkedIn so you can follow us, and a QR code that you can request resources, including a brief consultation with us. And I'd be happy to speak to you and help you, navigate your job search.
Going back to your previous conversation or advice about LinkedIn, this person asked, do you actually need a LinkedIn? Um, Especially if you're providing a resume and a cover letter, should one include relevant older experience and all recent experience with dates on their resume?
Okay, so that sounded like a two-part question. So,
Yeah, sorry.
LinkedIn, I do strongly recommend having a LinkedIn. And I know that I'm gonna discuss the age-old question of whether you should have a photo or not. I do believe you should have a photo. And again, like I said to one of the previous questions, you want to put your best foot forward. I do think it should be a professional photo as much as possible. I think you should look your best. I'm not, saying Photoshop it or hide anything, but look your best, and that photo should be on your profile. Again, the folks that are hiring should be interested in you for who you are and putting your best foot forward. um, the second part of your question was about resume. So we typically recommend that your resume reflect about 15 years of experience. So that would be from 2011 to 2026. If you have relevant experience from before 2011 that speaks to the job or the role that you're looking for, then I would include it in sort of this heading or this, strategic section at the top, either as a skill, or you could reference the bullet point as to that you actually did this um, task or skill. But remember to position it as an outcome, right? You don't want to just say that you were an HR generalist. You want to say what you accomplished, or the outcomes you achieved. And there's you don't have to put a date. It could just be in the general like heading category.
Thank you. I think we have time for maybe like two more questions before we wrap up. We have a question from someone who says, how do you position looking to go back to a job after a few years of entrepreneurial experience?
Okay, very interesting question. Again, we have not experienced that at 50 Wise. But if I were to put myself in those shoes, because that's something that's been, I've been entrepreneurial, and if I were to go back to my previous employer, um, the number one thing that employers tackle when hiring someone new is onboarding and training, like the together, right? And I know at my previous employer, it would take a new employee 6 months of training to learn the product, understand the market, and the back end of what they were providing, because it was a technology system. So for myself, I would position myself as, you can avoid that 6 months of onboarding that was typical to get on board, and I could hit the ground running. So I think that is a huge value add for companies, right? They know you, they know your expertise, you're familiar with the product, and you might have to be realistic, and there might still be some training for any new features or any new market situations or whatever. But the truth of the matter is, you could probably come in and hit the ground running fairly quickly. So that would be my number one, positioning. Plus, you're already familiar with the competitive landscape. You're familiar with, whatever partners, clients. So many aspects of the job that a new person that doesn't have all of that would definitely take time to ramp up. So that would be my suggestion. Um, Kashima, I would like to share my screen one more time and just talk about
Yes.
the QR codes uh,
Yeah, feel
that I
free.
have for everybody. So while we're answering the final questions, folks can do this. So hopefully you guys can see this. There's this QR code here on the left. Um, it not only will you have access to the AI prompts, but it's a form basically, and you can ask us for the AI prompts. You can ask for the data from webinar number one, which was all the facts and statistics and links that helped us overturn the 6 myths. And you can also have request a 15-minute free consultation with us. So that's this one on the left. The one on the right takes you to our LinkedIn page, and you can start following us so you can stay current with jobs, content that we post.
Thank you, Maggie. So this is going to be the final question of the day. What's the best way to explain gaps in the resume or employments in different industries and fields?
I'm not sure that I completely understand the question. I think that the gist of the question is that they're switching fields, or is it certain fields? Um, but in general, this is one of those cases where you don't need to overshare. The interviewer or the recruiter or whoever is speaking to you really just wants to know that it's not overwhelming your life, and that you will be uh, committed to the job. So you want to share enough information that conveys that you're organized, you got this, you figured out a routine, or maybe you're no longer needed for it, whatever it is. The reason they're asking is to just make sure that you can do the current job at hand. So, you know, uh, you don't want to mislead anybody. You don't want to say anything that's not accurate or factual, but you should be thinking about what has changed in your life that you can now do a job either while you're still addressing this gap, or the gap is no longer in your life. And again, I can't stress enough, you can be brief. And if they want more information or if they have doubts, they will ask you. This is one of those cases where you don't want to overshare.
All right. Well, thank you, Maggie, for your wonderful and insightful discussion and presentation. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I hope it was very helpful. I love the engagement and the support that you all are showing for each other in the chat. Before you all go, please complete a short survey that will appear. I'll also drop it in the chat as well, but a pop-up will appear as well as you exit. If you have any questions with Maggie, definitely feel free to reach out to her. Again, I will send a recording and the resources tomorrow. So please be sure to check out your email then. And then again, thank you so much. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us, and we hope to see you at our future events. Thank you again, Maggie.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, take care. Have a great afternoon.